The night he was elected, he said something along the lines that because of what we've done today, we have begun to change America and fix the world.
Remaking America, that was his phrase. And as I listened to that, I thought to myself, how do you remake America without unmaking America? So this is Obama's secret weapon. He disarms us.
This is exactly what we talked about last week. Obama is a liar. This is a repulsive, despicable ad. It shows the true colors of the man that, oh, we thought was hope and change. No, he was just too young to show us his true colors. This despicable campaigner, because they can't go into his divorce records. They can't get anything on him. He makes you and me look like Paris Hilton, this guy, the Mormon. It is truly shocking. And, of course, it also reminds us once again what Obama doesn't want to talk about, and that's his record, and how he is wrecking American health care, how he's put millions of people out of work, how he's quadrupled the federal deficit. He can't talk about his record. People are out of work. And this is all coming directly from Obama. I mean, he hasn't been in politics that long. That's why he's the perfect Democrat to run. He doesn't have enough of a record. Well, he has a record now. Well, I think I just gave it. It's a lie. Obama is a liar. He is a liar. This is not hope and change. It is.
Director, co-writer Dinesh D'Souza, and executive producer of a new film. The new film is called 2016. I just watched it, as did every member of the audience just a few minutes ago. And it explains Barack Obama. Who here, A, has a fuller understanding of Barack Obama after watching the film, right? Yeah.
I do think it'll enlighten people that that know something is not right, but can't put their finger on it, and will reinforce for them when they're being told by the media that you know, keep on moving, folks. Nothing's going on here.
Why would you think that President Obama would want his citizens in his own country to be second class?
Well, Obama's a global guy, and he looks at America through global eyes. I think from Obama's point of view, America and the West have enriched themselves at the expense of the rest of the world. So Obama would like to see the American economy contract. He would like to see American influence in the world shrink. Now, it's not because he's an evil guy or he hates America. It's just that it's in the name of global fairness. He wants Americans to have less so the rest of the world can have more. He wants America to have less power so that other countries can come up in the world. He'd like to see a multipolar world in which America is not the sole superpower. Not only do I believe it, but Obama says it. He talks, for example, about how America has 5% of the world's population, but we use 25% of the world's energy, of the world's oil. What Obama's kind of saying is, listen, we ought to use less so that countries like Brazil and Colombia and Mexico can have more. And this isn't just rhetoric. Obama uses taxpayer money to subsidize oil drilling in Brazil and Colombia and Mexico. So he's trying to enrich the previously colonized countries at the expense of the colonizer. Well, first of all, the radical Muslims have come to power in Tunisia and Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood has won an election in Egypt. The Obama administration has notified the Egyptian generals, listen, you better turn over power to the Muslim Brotherhood or we're going to cut off U.S. aid. So I'm not saying that Obama caused the Arab Spring, but I'm saying he is acting quite vigorously to reduce American influence, to weaken. Mubarak was clearly an American ally, and who can deny that the Muslim Brotherhood is the largest organization of radical Islam in the world? Well, first of all, we're talking about Obama's motives, and they can only be inferred by looking at his actions. If you look at Obama's actions, what has he done meaningfully to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb? Every several months, there are reports that Iran gets closer, closer, closer. The Israelis are in panic about it, but Obama seems unconcerned. In fact, Obama's energy and efforts have been focused on slashing America's. For starters, look, Obama supported the protesters in Egypt very happily when they were demanding democracy in Egypt. A year earlier, there were massive demonstrations in Iran calling for an end to the regime of the mullahs. What did Obama do? Obama said we should not get involved. There's a debate going on in Iran. Let them settle it up. So I'm simply saying let's support pro-democracy elements in Iran, just as we supported them in Egypt. No, I think we have to make an important distinction here. Obama does not support Al-Qaeda or bin Laden. He sees those guys as international criminals. But he does have a measure of sympathy for Muslim jihadis in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Why? Not because Obama is a secret Muslim, but he sees those guys as freedom fighters who are trying to free their country from colonial occupation. One of the reasons Obama is so hostile to Israel is he sees Israel as a little colonial power sitting on Muslim land. Well, you're just asserting things, Piers. Look, you come from Great Britain, which was a colonizing country.
Wait a minute. With respect, you are the one asserting things. You've also said he detests Britain, which is also complete nonsense.
Well,
absolutely nothing about Barack Obama's behaviour since he came to power has been anything other than totally respectful of Britain, often going out of his way.
One of the things, the first tip-off to me was this. This is the bust of Winston Churchill. This is an exact replica that we had made, and we actually had to call the chief historian of the White House and get them to send us photographs of it and measurements of it so we could recreate it for this Oval Office. This is what the Oval Office looked like when George W. Bush was in it. It is dramatically changed, but the main thing that has changed since Barack Obama was in it is that bust, which was a gift from the British, our closest ally and friend. That bust was taken out and boxed up and shipped back to England. It was a gift after the attacks of 9/11. And it was how it was done that bothered me and confused me. It was boxed up after the British Prime Minister said, no, Mr. President, that's a gift from the British people. And Barack Obama said, no, well, we don't need it. And he said, well, you put it in a museum. It was a gift from the British people. And what happened next was the Prime Minister left and Obama had it boxed up and shipped back. Well, we obviously couldn't get the original, so we had another one made and put it back where it belongs. But this is the key to the show tonight. This is where things for me, when they took it, go ahead, Wade, when they took it out of the Oval Office and they shipped it back to England, that's when things got confusing to me. But to me, that's where our journey begins.
To be respectful to Britain.
Let's start
Where
with
do you
why
get the fact that he detests my country?
Well, let's start with something simple. Obama moves a Winston Churchill bust out of the White House, one of his first acts as president. And that's not something Bill Clinton would do, or Kerry, or Gore.
Come off it. You're basing the fact that he moved a bust out of an office, which he's perfectly entitled to do.
Of course he is.
Busts come and go in those offices, right? You're basing that as the reason why he detests Great Britain.
When you saw this go out of the Oval Office, most Americans, I still tell this story about this statue and that it's been shipped back, and how many people knew this story when you saw the film? I mean, that's amazing, because how many people generally watch my show a lot, okay? So you watch my show a lot. I've talked about this story over and over again. Still, I run into a majority of Americans, they have no idea this happened. When it happened, I didn't know what it meant. How long, what did this say to you when you heard this story?
Piers, I didn't look. All I'm saying is it's symbolic of the fact that Winston Churchill is perceived as a colonizer. He was head of the colonial office. He was re-elected in the 50s, and he led a suppression of an anti-colonial uprising in Kenya. Two of the people who were arrested in that anti-colonial uprising were one Onyango Obama, the president's grandfather, and one Barack Obama Sr., the president's dad. So Obama actually has very good reasons to loathe Winston Churchill. You just don't know what they are.
I didn't know this was the key, but I knew something was really, really wrong. Explain this.
Well, this man, Winston Churchill, is known to most Americans as the great fighter of the Nazis. We will fight them on the beaches. We will never surrender. And that's why Churchill is a bipartisan hero in America. But when I was growing up as a kid in Mumbai, in Bombay, we learned more about the other Churchill. And this was the Churchill who, from his young years, was a colonialist. He rode with the colonial armies in Afghanistan. He was with Lord Kitchener in the Sudan, a famous battle called Omdurman. Later, he became the colonial secretary in charge of all the colonies. Now, interestingly, with Churchill, when he met Gandhi, India's anti-colonial leader, Churchill said, "I will not be the prime minister to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire." And in the 1950s, when Obama's father was growing up, there was an anti-colonial uprising in Kenya. Obama's father was arrested, his grandfather was detained, and it was Winston Churchill who had been re-elected as Prime Minister of Britain. He sent in the British troops that crushed the anti-colonial uprising in Kenya. So Obama has good reason to hate this guy.
Concept, Dinesh, that Obama wants. He wants to put Americans more into debt. Why on earth would any American president actively want to put his citizens into more debt?
It's the #1 question of George Soros, of what I say about Barack Obama, what I say about Van Jones. They'll say, why? I mean, Glenn, they're successful, they make money, they've got all this power, blah, blah, blah. Why would they want the America that we understand and know destroyed? Why would Barack Obama want to destroy the United States?
Because if American citizens and if our children and grandchildren are saddled with more debt, at some point they're going to have to pay that money back. A good deal of our debt is held by Kuwaitis and by Saudis and by Chinese, so debt becomes a way of settling America's global colonial debts in Obama's mind. We all want America to be prosperous. We all want America to be strong. We all want America to be #1. We're just debating how to get there. The message of this film is, wait a minute, there may be one guy, and he happens to be the guy, who is outside that consensus and for good reason has a very different agenda. Now, let me say a word here. Obama has added $5 trillion to the national debt. The highest deficit by Bush, who was a big spender, by the way, was $500 billion. The lowest Obama deficit is $1 trillion. There's no doubt that if there wasn't a Republican Congress, Obama would have spent even more. Now, imagine if he gets a second term, adds $5 more trillion to the national debt. America will be $20 trillion in debt, 10 trillion of that added by one man. Well, you're attacking a complete straw man. We actually know that Obama has a hidden agenda. Obama leans over to the Russian President Medvedev, taps him on the thigh and says, listen, Mr. Medvedev, I want to give you certain things about missile defense, but I need flexibility. You got to wait till after the election, because Obama's admitting that if I told the American people now what I wanted to do, they may not vote for me.
You show Barack Obama sitting with what's his name in Russia, and he leans.
Medvedev.
Yeah, Medvedev.
The Russian president.
And he leans over and he says, "Listen, I need some more room here. I'll have more room to maneuver." Chilling, bone chilling. Medvedev says, "I'll transmit the Vladimir."
And I stand with you.
Yeah, and I stand with you. What does that imply?
Well, that implies, at the least, that he has a hidden agenda.
It's my last election for you. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. Yeah. I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and I stand with him.
Well, it was this particular conversation, which wasn't supposed to go public, that's got tongues wagging across the US after being captured by cameras word for word. In what they thought was a private exchange, Barack Obama told his Russian counterpart that he'll be more flexible on the missile defense issue after the election.
So wait till after the election and then we can do business. So we know he has a hidden agenda. We just don't know fully what that is.
There's no doubt that that was a moment for those of us who don't like to be cynical. That we had a lot of dancing to do on that. That was a horrible moment, and that was an agenda different than he's telling the American people.
Further,
You're just right on that.
We may not know what that agenda is, but the clear meaning of what Obama's saying is he's saying, look, Medvedev, there are things I want to give you, and he's talking about missile defense in this case. He goes that if I were to tell the American people what those things are, they might not re-elect me. So wait, give me space, give me flexibility, his actual words, so that I can do these things after I'm reelected. Remember, in the second term, a president is not tethered to public opinion. He becomes his own man. So weirdly, I think, despite all we've seen about Obama, we haven't seen the full Obama.
Do we? That's frightening.
Well, all I'm saying is this. I'm offering a theory to explain Obama's behavior. I'm saying Obama, at his heart, is an anti-colonialist who believes that American superiority is bad for the world. He believes that America is a dominant power that projects its power badly in the world. What Obama would like to do is pull back America's footprint in the world because he thinks we've been stepping on the world.
And look at what's happening now.
Yeah, I think Obama wants to reduce America's footprint in the world because he thinks we're stepping on the world. So I'm not saying that he's an evil guy. I'm simply saying...
Hang on, Dinesh.
Well, the problem is this, and that is in Libya, Obama used force, claiming that he was preventing genocide. Now, how many people had Gaddafi killed at that point? About 250. Meanwhile, in Syria, over many, many months, tens of thousands of people are killed by...
Well, wait a minute. I'm not going to get away with that. You think Colonel Gaddafi has only killed, before he was killed himself, he only killed 250 Libyans?
He only killed 250 Libyans before Obama initiated the use of force, yes.
What? No, hang on. What do you mean, in totality?
No.
He operated a 40-year despotic regime. He killed tens of thousands of Libyans.
There was a revolt that began out of Benghazi, and Obama said, look, Gaddafi's been in power for decades, and in fact, the United States was doing business with Gaddafi. Remember, he was outing terrorists, he was paying reparations for the Lockerbie bomber, he was actually doing business with America, he had been somewhat behaving himself
if you remember,
since
though,
9/11.
Dinesh, if you remember...
So what he's doing is encouraging anti-American forces in the Middle East. He used force to push out Gaddafi in Libya, and he used diplomacy to push out Mubarak in Egypt. Now, what did those two guys have in common? They were both doing business with the United States. Gaddafi is no friend of ours, but he was behaving himself since 2002. Mubarak was probably our greatest ally in the region, not counting Israel. Meanwhile, Obama refuses to use force when there's massive casualties in Syria.
Didn't even bring up Iran.
There were... Iran, you had bigger demonstrations than Tahrir Square.
Yeah.
And Obama says, no, oh no, not only did he not intervene, he told the rest of us to be quiet, let's be calm, and all of that died off. So what do Syria and Iran have in common? They're deadly enemies of the United States, and they are allied with each other.
If you remember, he was about to commit a massacre of epic proportions.
Yes,
well,
I'm saying in Syria there has been a massacre.
Wait a minute.
In Syria, there has been a much greater massacre, and Obama has absolutely refused to use military force.
I agree with you. I agree with you about Syria.
How do you explain the double standard?
In Syria, I agree with you. In Syria, I agree with you.
I have a larger concern.
The international community has been far too slow.
I have a larger concern, and that is that there are three important countries in the Middle East. There's Iran, there's Egypt, and there's Saudi Arabia. Now, Iran has been in the hands of the radical Muslims since 1979. Now we are seeing Egypt move into the radical Islamic orbit. And what's left? Saudi Arabia. Now, can you imagine if in a second Obama term, Saudi Arabia were to fall? The radical Muslims would come so much closer to their dream, which they've now had for 100 years.
The name of the documentary is 2016, which implies you can see down the road to what it's going to be like in 2016. Stop at Israel. What does Israel look like in 2016?
If I were an anti-colonialist, I would say that it is not enough to have a Palestinian state. It's not enough to give the West Bank and Gaza back. Why? Because the anti-colonial view is that Israel itself is the little colonial power, the little American surrogate sitting and occupying Muslim land.
It's a cancer.
So if I was an anti-colonialist, I would think, what is a clever way to get rid of Israel, to return the whole of Israel to the Muslims? Now, I think I would know the Jews aren't going anywhere.
But I would think of ways like, what if I were to support a right of return for Palestinian refugees? What if I were to make it so that Muslims would be the majority in Israel? Then the Jews would be a minority in their own country, and it would cease to be a Jewish country. And I could achieve that result by demanding democracy. Everyone has an equal vote. Just as if I wanted anti-colonialism in the Middle East, I would demand that Saudi Arabia have a free election. I'd say, royal family, we've seen it now in Egypt. You put yourself on the ballot, you run against the Muslim Brotherhood, and let's see who wins that election. So we look at the Middle East, there are three important countries. There's Iran, there's Egypt, there's Saudi Arabia. Iran has been in the hands of the radical Muslims since '79. Egypt is in the process of transporting itself into the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood. Who's left? Saudi Arabia. So if the radical Muslims get that one, they have Mecca, they have Medina.
If I'm not mistaken, over in the Middle East, 2011 was known as the year of the dictators, and 2012-13 is known as the year of the kings. Meaning, first we took care of the dictators, next come the kings, which would make you right.
Ben, let me bring you in there, because actually, you know, in between some of these crazy statements...
What's crazy about them? Half of it's already happened.
No.
Well, some of your statements, Dinesh, do sound completely barking mad, but others have credence to them. A lot of what you just said about Egypt and about Saudi has some merit to it.
And from my point of view, I mean, he's accusing Obama as being anti-colonialist, which I think is a good idea. I don't think we should be doing as much overseas as we are. I know that you can talk about how many lives were saved, but having America guess at who the winners and losers are overseas, at getting all these entangling alliances, I would like to see us doing much, much less.
And here's a point you might agree with me.
I disagree a little bit. I think we can wait. I think we can wait until damage is done and not have to predict everything, and certainly not be overseas nation building when our own country needs that.
I'm going to say, Dinesh, even though I don't agree with half of what you say, I rather enjoy the way you say it, so please come back again soon.
I would love to.
Nice to see you again.
Ben, always a pleasure. Come back soon.
Thank you.
The reason I got onto that topic was I started almost casually reading his autobiography, Dreams from My Father.
Keyword, from.
From my father, right? He's not talking about his father's dreams. These are the dreams that he, Obama, got from his dad.
Right. Do we survive 2016 if he's elected?
Well, I think that we do not survive as, I mean, the risk is, will America still be a world superpower? That's question number one. The second is, what about America's wealth? Now, I mentioned in the film, this is directly from the Federal Reserve, American wealth from 2007 to now is down 40%. So that's almost half. If American wealth were to drop another 40% in the next 4 years, that would be a total decline of American wealth of 66%, not 80%, but 66%. America would cease to be a first world country, because this is happening at the time when other countries are dramatically coming up. Brazil, Indonesia, Chile, India. So America would essentially drop back into the also-ran of nations, which is to say we would be exactly in the position that the world was in 1500 before colonialism. There was no superpower. There were multiple nodes of influence. That's the world I believe that Obama wants.
I can't see your name. Ken. Hi, Ken.
Got a question. The movie really scared me. At one point, 5 minutes from the end, will our military people allow him to take it to that point? Can they stop him?
No. He's the commander-in-chief. They work for him. He doesn't work for them.
He's also changed fundamentally the inside of the Pentagon.
He sets policy. Remember, the beauty of Obama is that he'll never say, he's not going to say, I'm trying to disarm the United States. He'll say, I dream of a world free of nuclear weapons. And of course, he's only slashing our weapons while the Chinese, the Indians, the Pakistanis, everybody else is building, modernizing. Similarly, if Obama's canceling oil drilling contracts, he'll never say, I want America to have less oil, I want America. He goes, you know, he gives the impression, I'm an environmentalist. So at every stage, he's able to state a theory, and that's why people follow him, right? People think, oh, yeah, that's right. And conservatives go, oh, he's mistaken about his environmentalism. He doesn't realize rise of global warming. Obama doesn't care if the Earth is getting hotter or colder. That means nothing to him. What he's trying to do is redistribute energy globally. And therefore, he's articulated policies that says we limit our energy use. And he's also said we've got to give money to the third world so they can grow and use energy in a responsible way.
That's why, at the same time we cut our oil, we started funding oil exploration, deeper sea exploration with Brazil. Zach.